Welcome to the LBJ Forum, Jamie Dimon.
Pattie, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
So for those of you who don't know, Jamie Dimon, the chairman and CEO of JPMorgan Chase, is one of the more evolved Fortune 500 CEOs. Much like LBJ himself, wanted leaders to be thinkers and doers who go out in the world and solve global problems. Jamie has used, since he became CEO in January 1st, 2006, he's used his CEO platform to go out in the world and really tackle problems around the world and engage in policy, engage in social issues. Jamie, my first question is, when you became CEO 15, almost 16 years ago, did you think of using your platform that way, or were you just like most CEOs who wanted to make next quarter's numbers?
Yeah, no, I never, believe it or not, I always focus much on customers, employees. Community is the one which is a little more complicated. But no, I always thought if you want to build something great, you better do it all right. It's more like a team. You can have really weak spots and think you're going to build a great company.
Yeah. So a little over a year ago, when the Business Roundtable came out with its new direction that the corporations are not just accountable to shareholders, they're accountable to customers, employees, suppliers, communities, as well as shareholders. And listing shareholders last, you were the chairman of the Business Roundtable then. You were an architect of that new policy. Was that new thinking because of the times we are in? Of course, this was pre-COVID, but how had your thinking on that evolved?
Well, actually, it was a reporter, Pattie, who had mentioned at a dinner we were having with some CEOs that you guys are stuck in this old thing. And I went and checked the old paradigm, and I came to the board of the BRT and said, this is not what we do every day. You talk about shareholder value. And I don't know how you could build shareholder value without taking care of customers. And you can't take care of customers without taking care of employees. You have to be successful. But this other notion was short-term versus long-term. To me, there's only one term, which is the long-term. It's like anything most of us do. We're always thinking way ahead than like next quarter. In fact, I always tell people whatever happens in a quarter in a company is based on decisions you made over the last 10 years. So the hard part, Pattie, was this concept of community. How does community relate? So I'm going to give you two examples. One is if you own a corner bakery store, you get involved in the community. That's what we do. You take the ice off the front, you give jobs, you help a local religious institution. Well, all a big company is we operate in, I'd say, 2,000 hamlets around the world. I want to be locally respected, just like that person who participated in the community. Because if you make your community better, it's better for everybody. The second, which is more complicated, which relates more to today, is if people get very selfish when they come to DC and they fight for things, that if we had a healthier economy for everybody, and the economy is going at 3% and not 2%, that would lift up the poor. That would create jobs. That would create housing. That would create tax revenues. And so I tell people it's a harder thing to do because it's policy. It's not just about your company, but most companies would be better off at 3% growth and 2% growth. So I say you better worry about getting the country doing well, because that's probably more important than fighting for some little tax break in Washington, D.C.
Do you think that more CEOs should engage in policy the way you do?
Yeah, I think that if you want to have a successful society, you need collaboration between government and business. The world is complex. It's very fast. It's very technological. We need good government. They cannot do it alone anymore. So if you look at education or infrastructure or AI, or all these various things, they just weren't set up to move that fast. And so, I'm in DC right now. If you go to DC, a lot of them say, we need help. So yeah, I think business, and it's more of an evolution. A lot of companies already did it a good way, and they're doubling down on it. But I do think it became too easy for successful institutions. I mean, successful institutions. They could be businesses, they could be universities, to drive by literally and figuratively the worst parts of society. Mm-hmm. Because you can just skip it. But if you skip it, then you've made society worse. And that's why I think, we all need to get involved to make society a better place.
Tell us about the New York Jobs Council.
Yeah. Well, it's a very specific part of that, which is, in New York City, there's an amazing number. 500,000 kids go to community college, community university, CUNY or CCNY, and we need to get them jobs when they get out. So something like a big percent don't graduate at all. So they spend some money on it and then they get the benefit. So the notion was that the CEOs make a long-term, sustained, dedicated effort directed at creating jobs for kids when they get out of high school, community college, et cetera, because and we need well-trained kids, but it also can lift up that part of society. And people think that society is a zero-sum game. It's not. I'll give you one quick example. If Canada was a failed country, America would be far worse off.
Right.
We'd have a not good trading partner. We'd have to have military in the border. We don't have any of that. So if you can lift up the South Bronx, parts of Brooklyn, we all will be better off. And it's the moral thing to do. And it's better social outcomes. So I think we got to, and to me, COVID and the murder of George Floyd just pointed out what we already knew.
Yeah.
And so let's just get at it and start fixing some of this stuff.
And a healthy New York is better for JPMorgan Chase. Just a little bit of background. I'd love to give you a little bit of background for those of you who are interested in this. This New York Jobs Council, CEO Council, is a really good example of the kind of thing that Jamie is talking about. Google, IBM, Verizon, McKinsey, Microsoft, CUNY, which is the largest urban university system in the US, in fact, the New York Department of Education, nonprofits, and community leaders all came together. Whose idea was this, Jamie?
Well, actually, it really actually goes to my wife, to tell you the truth, who started doing apprenticeship programs. A lot of these people got together to start these apprenticeships. And when I got involved a little bit, I said, if we want to accelerate this and make it permanent, big time and important, let all the CEOs, most of them who know it's a problem, and all the CEOs sign up right away. Let's get together, let's organize it, let's put some money behind it. And also, by the way, civic society was there to help. Like the guy who runs CUNY is just fabulous. So when you get people lined up together, you know what? It will work. It's still going to be a lot of work to get it done, but it will work.
And the basic idea here is to help connect untapped talent with in-demand jobs and train them properly. And I know that you have just announced a new program in Texas, similar in terms of training people for the jobs that exist and enable Texas to fill jobs. Explain that to us, if you would.
Yeah, so part of this, so a lot of jobs are national. So like automotive, taking care of automobiles, probably coding, certain retail, hospitality, certain are very local. So so this it really needs to be a local effort with local businesses. So, I don't know the specific ones we're doing in Dallas or Texas. We have 25,000 employees there. So I think what we're going to be doing is coding, digital services, and things like that. But and as you know, in Austin, where you're based, that's becoming a huge thing in Austin too. So it's got to be very focused. But the New York City Job CEO Council, part of it is the local focus. And we think that's what works when you get local companies, and they're in. They'll say, you know what, I could take 3 apprenticeships. And so by that, the other thing about the New York City CEO thing, it's not going to just for the 30. It's going to be opened up to everybody equally to participate, to add, and to benefit. So hopefully the whole community can get involved one day.
That's great. That's great. And, Jamie, I just, for those of you who have not seen, 60 Minutes has done a couple of terrific pieces on Jamie and the work at JPMorgan Chase in terms of building communities. And I went back and I watched the piece that Leslie Stahl did with you. One thing that you cold called Mike Duggan, the mayor of Detroit, who you had never met, and said, I want to help Detroit. Yeah. I'm making this point because when you get to be a person in your position, sometimes I think there's a view that you're not making the calls yourself. I bet you made a lot of the calls to get those CEOs on the New York Jobs CEO Council, and you instigated the work in Detroit. What What's the lesson in terms of building programs like this and kind of leadership from the top?
Yeah. So I called every one of those CEOs directly, and probably more than once. And Mayor Doug, we were one of the larger banks in Detroit, and obviously Detroit has suffered more than any other city in America, pretty much, and had no renaissance like a lot of other cities did. And then this guy was out there, he's a white guy elected in a black town, 75% black, and he just, you know what he said? Anyone who could help me, I want to help my town with police, with hospitals, with schools, with jobs, with infrastructure. And I was like all in. So I called him and said, hey, we're all in. So we made a $200 million, 7-year devoted effort. He's become like a friend of the family. He's just an exceptional guy. We reached out to unions. We reached out to a whole bunch of the people. And so, I mean, the lesson, roll up your sleeves, get involved. So I've been up to Detroit on this program, I don't know, 5, 6, or 7 times or something like that. But we've had probably 50, 60 people working there almost nonstop since we started. So it wasn't, once we got, it wasn't just the rah-rah, then we got deep. Whoever will work with us, it could be the schools, there are a bunch of charities there, affordable housing, community development institutions do affordable housing. We went to places that train kids in they need a lot of machine tooling, and it's really robotics. And actually, if you go there, a lot of us have a hard time learning that too. It takes a while. But that's what all of a sudden it starts to work because Fiat and I think someone else are building a brand new plant there. 10,000 new people directly, another 20 or 30,000 indirectly. That one thing can take the unemployment down by multiple points. That one thing. And by the way, if the kids weren't trained in the jobs, they probably wouldn't have wanted to go near Detroit.
A lot of your work with cities, whether it's New York, Detroit, what you're going to be doing in Texas, involves giving people training that doesn't necessarily require college degrees or graduate degrees. Nothing against the LBJ school, right, Jamie? That's the LBJ school is fantastic, but a lot of it is basically applying data and AI and all sorts of technology to match jobs and education and job needs and education. Am I right?
You're totally right. So one of the lessons, a lot of our companies had this, college degree required, and we're getting rid of that where it's not required. A lot of people are great out of high schools. They're devoted. They want the job. And all the jobs, as you all go through your lives, it's just you build these skills, and so certifications will matter, but it's lifelong learning. And so this notion that you're going to have one job and that's going to be it. No, you have to kind of continuously learn and stuff like that. So there's a school. I mean, it's an amazing thing. There's a school in New York City called Aviation High School. It's a high school. Kids travel from all over to go there for the following reason, mostly minorities, and their parents want them to go. They go to high school, they learn to read, write, arithmetic. They also learn how to maintain small aircraft, hydraulics, electrical systems, et cetera. And 95% get out with a job at $60,000 a year. So a very specific skill as part of high school, but they leave with a great livelihood. And of course, from there, they can go on to college if they want. No one's being restricted. So this notion there's only one thing, that will have to change over time. And then there are other things, which I know you know about, giving, felons who deserve a second chance, give them a second chance. We can't have people pay their price. So one of the things we're doing now, and I think we've hired several thousand this year because they paid their price. These are not, highly violent folks. These are people who, did the wrong thing at one point in life, and give them a chance to get their life back. And so there are tons of programs, and you go around the country. And part of what we're trying to do is our effort is, have a force multiplier. If it works here, do it there.
How has COVID accelerated or changed this kind of work that you're doing?
Was COVID less so than George Floyd? The murder of George Floyd was a sea change, I think, in the attitude of Americans and people about the injustice that's taken place here, the unfair. I mean, it created far more empathy for a class of people, our Black brethren citizens, about, it's been a long time that we've been talking about getting to parity economically and all these other measures and stuff like that. But I guess my frustration with COVID and George Floyd is it pointed out things we already knew. We have failed as a nation to do all, and you're a public policy school. So we're no longer good at public policy. Infrastructure is not good. And inner city school education is not good. We have red tape and regulation that crippled the small businesses. We've never designed proper health care, which is far more cost efficient and covers more people than we have today. And so all these things are fixable. Immigration, we don't have a proper immigration policy. And in each one of those things is hurting America. It's hurting American citizens. Often the people that hurt the most are the lower income and minorities. And so we need really good public policy. And one of the lessons to me for a lot of the folks listening here and the younger folks, public policy takes analysis, detail, understand the real world. Then you got to work the politics of it. But somehow, we've made our incompetencies becoming a little bit of a joke around the world. And, people see it right when they fly into our airport sometimes, that we can't keep up. And so to me, this is the single most important thing that America's got to do in the next 20 years. Get back to rational public policy. Of course, you can have differences between Democrats and Republicans, but that doesn't mean we can't have safer roads, better airports, better bridges, better functioning inner city schools, and a healthcare system that covers more people and cheaper.
So, Jamie, you're sitting there in Washington during this interview. If you could work your magic on Capitol Hill or in Washington, D.C., can you name a couple of things that you would want to do?
I'd have a massive infrastructure bill. And, infrastructure, it needs to be like $1 trillion, by the way, but that's if done right. So, sometimes you hear people say infrastructure for jobs. No, you're not doing infrastructure to create jobs. You're doing infrastructure. You need good roads and good hospitals and good, ports and good canals and good airports and all these various things. It will create great jobs. It'll also drive growth for years. Inner city school education, we've already spoken about, but there are a lot of things to do there. I think healthcare, you really got to get a group of really smart people. Some of you kids may solve it one day to go off and solve it. And regulations, it's not, obviously companies need to be regulated, but any one of you, go take, literally, you want to have fun, go take 10 small business or smaller companies out for lunch and ask them what it's like, because they have to file OSHA forms and workers' comp forms. They get audited by the city, the state, the federal government, and they own 2 stores that sell pots and pans, and so we're crippling our own society with some of these things. And immigration, we've already had in America, Schumer McCain had a bill. DACA stays, a path to citizenship, a long path for tax-paying, law-abiding, but undocumented Americans, like literally could take 15 years, and more merit-based immigration, which was one of the great things for our country. And if you look at growth, 0.3% more growth from immigration, 0.3% more growth a year from infrastructure. God knows how much more growth you get if we lifted up better parts of our society and education properly. So that would be my wish. And when I come down, you can imagine I'm always talking about that and writing about it. And it always gets bogged down in this partisan stuff, but I don't care about the partisan stuff. I care about lifting up America and its citizens. And I also remind people, because you're a public policy school, America is still the arsenal of democracy. Our military strength is predicated upon our economic strength. And so we got to get this right. And by the way, we have a great hand. It's not like we're going to lose the next 20 years, but let's just get it right to lift up our people and do better.
What keeps you from running for public office?
Well, my health hasn't been unbelievably great. I just, I've been in business my whole life. And I think when business people go out there and you think you could be good at politics, I think there's a common set of stuff. So I think leadership has common things and administration, but it's not 100% common. I think a lot of politicians are good at what they do, but you got to get out there. I call it retail politicking. I've never done retail politicking. And, stand in those town halls and I do them for my company. I'll take any and all questions, but I think it's a skill. And, the notion that a business person automatically has a skill, I think if you're going to do it, you should start, you shouldn't go for president. I mean, we do have a president who did it, shockingly, who went from business to president, but that's never happened before. And, so most people, they're congressmen, the senator, they're in the government or governors, and then they get real political experience and they run. So if I was going to do it, I probably would have had to start 10 years ago.
So, Jamie, besides what you said about encouraging young people to figure out answers to our America's healthcare problems, et cetera, what other parting words do you have to emerging leaders who may be going to the LBJ school, maybe they're graduates, maybe they're in some other field, but they may be in business, they may be in government, they may be in the nonprofit world. How can they best think about navigating a path where they can make a difference?
Yeah. So first of all, learning is lifelong, meaning learn. You can only learn by reading and by other people. Second is in business, in public policy, facts, analysis, detail, repeat over. People do a terrible job at that. And they also go into facts now deal with the preconceptions. Throw out the preconception you get in the room. Talk to everybody. So if you're a Democrat, read George Will, read Holman Jenkins, read Hayek. Don't assume these are really smart people, and they're not unethical and immoral in any way. And if you're a Republican, read Tom Friedman or David Brooks or something like that, because you learn a lot when you sit at the table and you talk to other people, where they're coming from, why they're there. You could have a little empathy in life. And the third thing is kind of more amorphous about leadership. I'm going to call it humanity and humility, which is you don't know everything. No one wants to work for a jerk. People who point fingers, kick people when they're down. You're not going to run a great institution that way. You see it all the time, finger pointing and second guessing. I know LBJ loved Teddy Roosevelt's thing. The credit goes to the person bloodied in the field, in the arena, not the critic in the stand. And so have humility these are tough things people are trying to get done. Respect other people. And believe me, you will have, if you treat people properly, you'll have followers who respect that leader. And leaders have to earn the respect every day. It isn't like somehow you get to this vaunted position and then you're entitled to whatever you think. No, you better earn it every day too. People want to see that you actually do what you say what you do, and lead with your heart a little bit.
You have Teddy Roosevelt's in the arena quote framed somewhere, don't you?
I do, and I sent it to Hank Paulson when he was Secretary of Treasury. Going through all that terrible stuff, through TARP and all that. I sent it to him. He appreciated it, and then your friend Andrew Ross Sorkin made it the beginning of his book.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, you're inspiring. There should be more Fortune 500 CEOs like you, and we will hope for that for the future. So, thank you, Jamie Dimon, for being with us today.
Pattie, thank you very much. A great pleasure. You're too kind. And folks, I wish you all the best in all your future endeavors.
JPMorgan Chase Chairman and CEO Jamie Dimon just told us that the murder of George Floyd marked a sea change for America. Since our conversation, he and the bank stepped up very big to address issues around race. JPMorgan Chase pledged $30 billion over the next 5 years to advance racial equity.